Well, I think that Ukraine needs to do what it needs to do.
$1.5 billion in tariff relief. Welcome back to Moose on Loose. My name's David. Today, Mark Carney announcing a new package to help bail out industries that are struggling in Canada. He also announces another package of Canadian tax dollars going over to Ukraine, which creates a major problem for Carney because Zelensky is wrapped up in a $100 million scandal, which then brings the question up, why is he doing this now? Let's jump into this. Starting this episode off from City News, we've got federal government rolling out $1.5 billion in tariff relief. This goes on to talk about to bolster the manufacturing sector, and this is in regards to U.S. tariffs affecting export products containing steel, aluminum, and copper. So obviously trying to help out those industries because they're getting hammered right now. Got this one from Blacklock's reporter. Buy Canadian, not Canadian. That's right, this program here, you're not going to believe this. It says companies 100% foreign owned still qualify as Canadian under Prime Minister Mark Carney's Buy Canadian policy, says the Department of Public Works. The definition of Canadian is so broad it applies to foreign state-owned corporations with storefront branches here like Bank of China records show. The policy does not establish a share ownership threshold, the department wrote in a report to the Senate National Finance Committee. Policy does, however, outline specific criteria for determining whether a company qualifies as a Canadian supplier. And here's the clincher. Only a street address, one employee, and GST number are required to be Canadian. So all you have to do is have one person, a storefront in Canada, and pay taxes from one location with one employee, and it can be considered a Canadian company. You can have, as it mentioned here, the Bank of China could be considered a Canadian company with just one branch with one person. Make this make sense. Also from Blacklock's reporter, we've got keep files on Facebook posts. The House of Commons administration is keeping files on what Canadians say about their MPs. The very robust records management system included social media posts, said Deputy Sergeant at Arms. We have different categories if they are misogynistic, etc. Deputy Paul Mellon testified at the House Affairs Committee. We can extract that information. Mellon did not explain the purpose of the records. His remarks came under questioning by MPs who complained of hurtful comments. They're collecting comments of MPs from Facebook and logging them in robust records. We got Shreya Teese from Polywave modeling out this liaison strategies poll. Liberals 45%, Conservatives 33%, and modeled out that would be 235 seats for the Liberals and 78 seats for the Conservatives. We got Mark Carney giving a speech here in Europe, as seen on the official source here, CPAC PM Carney attends 8th European Political Community Summit. This is pretty telling what he's doing here. He uses a lot of the same phrases from his Davos speech. Once again says rupture and essentially hints that he wants to move Canada more towards Europe. There's this talk about joining the European Union, which directly goes against his election campaign of making us sovereign and not becoming the 51st state. What are we going to become, the 28th state of the EU? So it's not okay to join America, but it's okay to be a state of the EU. And sure, you can say European Union is not quite joining the country, but I mean, this does not fall in line with his making us a sovereign nation rhetoric from his election.
Because of your invitation, again, thank you for that. But we're here because of the moral and security imperatives of our cooperation in the Caucasus, in the Baltics, in Ukraine, across Europe, and also because of the immense potential for our partnerships to build a better, more prosperous, sustainable, and just world for our citizens. And I'll close with this. It's my strong personal view that as the international order will be rebuilt, but it will be rebuilt out of Europe. And so I'm very appreciative of the symbolism of this invitation. Thank you.
You hear that? He wants to rebuild this new world order out of Europe, obviously bringing in China as well, and not with America. So obviously this isn't going to help negotiations that he's supposed to be doing right now with Donald Trump in America. Once again, trying to anger the bear and not get a deal.
I'm going to start, if I can, with this trip to Armenia that the Prime Minister is on. He's gone, obviously, to sort of deepen ties with European leaders as the only European nation invited to this kind of meeting. But it's my understanding he's also going to have a bilateral with President Zelensky, and there'll be a lot of talk about Ukraine. What is your understanding, or what do you think is going to come out of that meeting in terms of what Ukraine needs right now?
So first of all, I think it's a great sign that he was included. So I think it's a great opportunity to continue speaking about Ukraine.
Why is this a great opportunity when 1 in 4 Canadians are skipping meals? Our economy is crumbling, GDP is dropping, and we don't have a deal with America. And we're talking about how we can help Ukraine? I'm sorry, but taxpayer money needs to go to help Canadians, not Ukraine. Meanwhile, on Mark Carney's official X account, he's posting a clip here with Zelensky. And what's this all about? Well, it's $270 million of taxpayers' hard-earned money that is being sent over for new military support to Ukraine. Mark Carney stating Ukraine's fight is our fight. Their cause, freedom, democracy, sovereignty, is our cause. Good to see President Zelensky. Mark Carney getting asked about what this money's going to.
Sir, Ukraine, fairly significant announcement today. What's that going to buy?
Well, there's a system. It's actually, we started ramping up a little more than a year ago. It's basically the prioritized military equipment for the Ukraine. So it's prioritized by Ukraine. The Pearl acronym is prioritized Ukrainian.
Okay, I gotta stop this for a second. What in tarnation is this on his lapel? Is this a diamond encrusted Order of Canada pin? That's what this looks like.
And so there are a series of packages that are made available. Canada has participated in a number of them.
I had to stop this for a second. I had to look this up to see what this thing is. I can't find what this is. It just looks like a giant Order of Canada pin.
They're not divisible as package. You can't send part of a missile system. You have to send the whole thing. And with this money, we're going to be able to complete one of the packages with some Nordic partners, with Belgium and others. So the president was not surprising. President Zelensky was grateful. I'd stress a couple of things, and I'll hand back. The first is that the munitions are being made available. Munitions, a broad, loose term, being made available by the Americans. So it's a question of financing and getting them there. We're doing that. We're getting them there. That's the first point. Second, we had made a commitment earlier this year in February, $2.4 billion for Ukraine, Canadian. So this is part of that overall commitment. We're continuing to provide it. It's part of a bigger puzzle in a conflict where Ukraine is gaining some advantage.
So $270 million that he's sending of taxpayer money over there.
I want to ask you about some additional money that was announced by the Prime Minister in the spring economic update last week, $2.3 billion in training and support for Ukraine. What's your understanding of what that training and support could look like?
I assume you're talking about the Op Unifier?
Yes, exactly, yeah.
Okay. So, as you know, we've been supporting Op Unifier since 2015.
You can see the source here on the Government of Canada website. Operation Unifier is a Canadian Armed Forces military training, professionalization, and capacity building mission to support Ukraine. So Harper launched this because they needed help training their troops over there with Russia's annexation of Crimea. It says they've trained 47,000 members, 13,000 of them have been trained in various locations across Europe. But since then, it's just been dishing out billions of dollars to Zelensky, who's now caught up in a scandal of money laundering.
It's a very good thing, and Ukraine very much appreciates it.
Meanwhile, we've got this story breaking just a few days ago, April 29th. Mindich tapes mentions mansions likely built for Zelensky, Yermak, and Mindich himself. This is coming from Ukrainskaya Pravda. This is one of the most trusted media sites in Ukraine posting this. Now, who's Mindich? This is a longtime friend of Zelensky and a former business partner. And you can see the houses here. The National Anti-Corruption Bureau, NABU, has disclosed the contents of a conversation recorded as part of Operation Midis in an apartment of sanctioned businessman Timur Mindich, who is suspected of corruption in the energy sector. Initially, this story was back from November 10th, 2025. So this is Mindich here. Zelensky's close ally charged amid large-scale energy corruption probe from army to Zelensky, Ukraine's corruption scandal rocks country. Posted by Radio Free Europe here on November 12th, 2025. The summary of this: Ukraine faces major corruption scandal involving high-level officials, 100 million in alleged kickbacks in the energy sector. Key figures: Timur Mindich, a former business partner of President Zelensky. The scandal impacts Ukraine's war efforts and morale and undermines the credibility of the country's anti-corruption efforts. According to NABU, those involved in the case are believed to have laundered around 100 million using back office in Kyiv owned by the Derk family. Money was being laundered through the energy sector in Ukraine. It says here the Anti-Corruption Bureau reported that the group was collecting bribes from Emergermaton contractors, accounting for 10 to 15% of each contract's value. This same company here owns Zaporizhzhia, as we see on the Moose chart. This nuclear power plant, which is the largest in Europe, has 6 reactors. Russia captured Zaporizhzhia in March of 2022. Russian military forces attacked and occupied ZNPP, which houses 6 Ukraine's 15 nuclear reactors. The fiscal takeover by Russia's state-owned nuclear entity Rosatom effectively severed Westinghouse and Cameco from their exclusive contract to supply the plant's fuel and infrastructure upgrades. Cameco was supplying the uranium to this nuclear power plant. Westinghouse was doing the upgrades and the maintenance on these. Russia captures it. Now they're rebooting the power plants as of February using their own uranium, cutting Westinghouse out of the deal. And Westinghouse being one of the key pieces here to Mark Carney's Brookfield Global Transition Fund 1, one of the largest nuclear service businesses and a major contributor to his Brookfield Global Transition Fund 1 carried interest. We've got Zelensky's longtime friend and former business partner, Midich, here, caught up in a scandal with the Ukrainian state-owned energy company, Energoatom. And then fast forward to today, we've got the Midich tapes here. So this is leaked audio files showing that there's mansions likely built for Zelensky, Zermak, and Midich himself. It's a whole lot of corruption in a short period of time. And so now we've got this just in the last couple of days, Zelensky implicated in Ukraine's largest corruption scandal. And what do the new tapes reveal? A new round of leaked tape surfaces in Ukraine's sweeping corruption scandal. One question stands at the center. Did President Vladimir Zelensky know? Alleged transcripts of audio tapes were published by media outlet Ukrainska Pravda on April 28th and May 1st, and by lawmakers Yaroslav Zelensvyak and Oleksiy Honchardenko on May 1st. The tapes are part of the investigation conducted by the National Anti-Corruption Bureau of a $100 million scheme. So this just ties in with that previous story. It's just giving us more information now of what's happening. So it's just wrapping all this up together. Mark Carney creates Brookfield Global Transition Fund 1, which then buys Westinghouse with Cameco. They do a deal with Energoatom, the Ukraine company here that allegedly did this $100 million kickbacks, 10 to 15% off contracts, with Zelensky's longtime friend and former business partner. This company wrapped up in the scandal is the same company that Westinghouse has these contracts for Zaporizhzhia that Russia captured in 2022. They're firing up these nuclear power plants recently with their own uranium, cutting Cameco and Brookfield out of the deal, which directly affects the profits of Mark Carney's Brookfield Global Transition Fund 1. Obviously, he doesn't like that, and I've brought this up. I think that's why he's sending over $2 billion to Ukraine in June 17th, another $2 billion in military support in August 24th, another $2.5 billion announced December 27th, 2025 commitment to Ukraine, straight off the official source, the Prime Minister's website. And then we've got February 24th, 2026, Carney pledges $2 billion to Ukraine sanctions for Russia's shadow fleet as war enters the 5th year. And now we have another $270 million going to Ukraine today, May 4th, 2026. It seems very plausible with all of this backed by sources and facts that if Mark Carney sends more of our money to Ukraine, it is more likely for Ukraine to push the fighting line here back and get the Ukrainian power plant back, which I believe is right over here. And if that happens, then Mark Carney's value of his Brookfield Global Transition Fund will go back up because they have the largest nuclear power plant back under Ukrainian government control. But more importantly for Carney is the contracts of Brookfield and Cameco would then start flowing back there as they reboot that power plant. And that power plant alone provides 25% of all of the energy to Ukraine. So one must ask, why on earth, if there's such massive scandals going on, and this just happened 4 days ago, would Carney commit another $270 million to Ukraine, knowing full well that Zelensky's wrapped up in these scandals? Wouldn't you want to investigate the guy and make sure everything's squeaky clean there before you're giving taxpayer money over to the guy?
From our membership of the Coalition of the Willing is one of the largest per capita contributors to Ukraine.
One of the largest per capita contributors to Ukraine. That's what Canada is. Got to ask the question, why would Carney send over this $270 million to Ukraine after these new audio tapes have come out that are now pulling Zelensky into this scandal, this Mindich Mansion scandal? At the very least, Mark Carney should be doing some due diligence and not just shoveling more money over there. And while there isn't direct involvement from Zelensky at this point, this just goes to show that Mark Carney isn't careful with Canadian tax dollars. There's no due diligence being done here. And regardless of the outcome of this scandal, it says a lot about how Mark Carney handles our money. We also got Carney posting this on his official account. The relationship between Canada and Europe is rooted in common history and shared values, and we're building that in a more In a more divided world, we're choosing partnership in trade, defense, and security to build a more prosperous and secure future together. He had to throw the divided in there. He'll use this rhetoric until his last day as prime minister.
EU defense minister has renewed a pitch for this idea of a European defense union, which would not include the United States. What does that tell you about the state of NATO? What are the concerns in Ukraine about the need for some sort of European defense mechanism to help?
Well, I think the first thing is that Canada is the first non-European country that's joined the European Security Action for Europe, which is significant. Basically, it unlocks lots of billions of dollars for and gives Canada access to markets in terms of defense, which is very significant.
We have literally the best defense manufacturer in the world, just south of us in the United States. They make the best planes, the best missile systems, the best everything, and our country is integrated into a lot of these supply chains like F-35s. A lot of those components are made in Canada, and we're going over to make an agreement with Europe, the defense of Europe. Our country's not even located over there. This doesn't make sense at all. Mark Carney is not negotiating with Donald Trump. Goes over to Europe, more money to Ukraine.
So you're seeing a lot more coordination. That Canada signed a joint production with Ukraine. So we are getting ourselves very much into the defense military industry that involves Ukraine and it involves Europe. And Ukraine has proven itself to be quite a leader in military tech. So this is good for Ukraine. This is good for Europe. This is good for Canada.
Is it your understanding, though, that this European group that people are talking about would be sort of to protect Europe and Ukraine from the possibility that the United States is not as focused on what's happening in Ukraine and its war against Russia?
So I wouldn't put it that way. I think that Europe is just very much in tune with the fact that it needs to have a very coordinated and Europe-focused defense of its territories and its interests of democracy, its economy. So I've only heard it in those terms.
Well, if those are the terms, then why is Canada joining that? Why are we a part of the SAFE program, which is the defense of Europe, when, once again, we're not a European nation, we're not located in Europe, we're nowhere near Europe?
Ukraine has been ramping up attacks on Russian oil refineries again today, 4 strikes in the past couple of weeks. President Zelensky has said that Ukraine's allies have urged him to scale back those attacks amid, obviously, the global fuel crisis and what's happening in Iran. What is Canada's position on that?
So Canada believes that Ukraine has a right to defend itself, its sovereignty and its integrity. So
this is an interesting point because that increases the prices of every country that uses oil, or indirectly increasing prices on us. Meanwhile, Ukraine runs on nuclear energy, so not really affecting them all that much. And yet we keep sending more money over there. I mean, we should get some say in calling the shots if we are the biggest per capita donator of money to Ukraine.
Well, I think that Ukraine needs to do what it needs to do.